Hello, everyone. My name is Pyra Draculea, and this is a new kind of a weekly show that I decided to start doing. What is the title here? I think I'm calling it Saturday Morning Scuttlebutt because I like alliteration. It's kind of blah, blah, chattery. And that's what the thesaurus gave me for that option. And thesaurus.com. So, what is the idea here? Well, long, long ago in a galaxy, well, who am I kidding, right here in this room. Um, but back when I used to do a lot more embroidery, there's a thing in the embroidery world called FlossTube. And where people make, not everybody does it weekly, but some people do it weekly. And then it's like um, a kind of what did I do this week? What am I working on? Some folks like Priscilla and Chelsea bring in what am I watching and some other sort of uh, extra bits. And I always thought that was a fun format. Long ago, I used to make, when I had time to do embroidery, when I made time to do embroidery, let's be blunt, we all have the same amount of time. Um, but I actually used to do FlossTube. I think I've hidden them all on my channel because it doesn't really relate anymore. Um, and I say a lot. Anyways, I was thinking now that my focus, and sorry, every time I move, this chair squeaks. I don't know if that's going to pick up in my mic, but if it does, sorry. I squirm a lot in this chair. Needs some WD-40, I think. Anyways, I was thinking now that I'm focusing on art, it would be kind of neat to have like a weekly check-in type of video. And the format doesn't really seem to be a thing so much in art. Either it'll be like studio vlogs or tutorials or, day in the life kind of things, but not like a weekly kind of check-in like FlossTube used to be, is. I was going to say used to be for me, but, still is for a lot of people. So I decided, why don't I borrow the format and do kind of a version of that, and away we go. So, my name is Pierre Draculea. A tiny bit of background. I'm primarily a cartoonist. I've been painting and I've been cartooning too, like in the margins of my notebooks and stuff ever since I was a kid. But I've, I guess next year will be like the 20th year that I've been doing more. No, it's actually longer than that. I've been, because I had 2005 or 2006, I took a continuing studies class at Emily Carr that was the contemporary comic. I actually took part one and part two of that. Um, so I developed a couple of comic strips around that time. One was called What the Hell. I think it ran once in Discorder magazine. I used to write for Discorder, and I used to be a DJ at CIT Radio in Vancouver. Um, and then I developed Zommel the Destroyer, which is kind of a nod, tribute to a pet iguana I'd had that had died a few years prior. And Zommel, as the iguana, is this obnoxious talking lizard bossing her pet human around and all that sort of stuff. Based on true life, except for the talking part. Sorry, there would be some little snip snip gons in here because I'm getting over a cold. It's pretty much gone, but if I talk, I cough. So sorry about that. But if you see, that's why. Anyways, so there's Zommel that ran as a comic. I used to post it on MySpace, um, and I did that I guess until like 2009 when I started getting involved with music industry. Well, on the fringes in the Vancouver music industry. I used to have an industrial project called Maclu, Industrial Noise, which at the time of this recording is some of that stuff still up on Spotify. Uh, I'm probably actually going to pull it down because I haven't put out an album in 10 years. And anyways, it's a long story. But for now, you could go listen and go, oh, I wish I hadn't listened over on Spotify, or there is YouTube. It's Maqlu. That's how that's spelled. Um, but anyways, I stopped having time for cartoons. And later did some comedy podcasting, and yeah, been all over in the creative world. But in 2022, I started doing a comic called Noah's Archipelago, which I post. In theory, it's 4 times a week. Lately, the Monday cartoon tends to be MIA. But I posted on, there's a Facebook page and Instagram. I also have a website for Noah. It's out of date. I'm sorry. That's going to be one of my projects for December, is getting the Noah website up to date. Because I'm working on the first comic anthology for Noah, which is actually only going to cover 9 months. When I had lots of energy, I was doing like 6 comics a week. But that's getting close to done, so I should get the website, Anyways, and then in 2023, I had this crazy Bono mouse sketchbook project. I'll just link to the video in the description below rather than, But out of that was born an entire universe of humanoid talking rats and mice. And the main character there is Ricky B, the rock and roll rat. And then his girlfriend Baby, and his girlfriend Baby's half rat, half mouse cousin Miles. It's a whole thing. Anyway, so I do a lot of cartoon with that. Now for painting, I've been painting since I was, really little. And off and on, like I leave it for a few years and I come back and paint with a fury, and then I leave it for a few years. And anyways, I kind of come to the conclusion that I'm really not happy unless I'm painting, so got to make time for that. And to that end, I am working more and more. And what I used to, my paintings used to kind of, I did some like weird landscapes, a lot of abstracted, symbolic type of stuff. I mean, the Maclu stuff, all that cover art I did. I did all the graphics. I did everything except for the mastering engineering, which is like the final make it louder for radio kind of thing. And I mentioned I was a DJ at CITR. I also, Maclu got airplay and college radio chart positions across Canada for the few years that I was bothering. I have index cards because I have the attention span of a gnat. Okay, so I told you my name. I told you that I'm a cartoonist and a painter. I told you about Noah and Ricky and Maclu, FlossTube. Oh yeah, and it says phone insert. I'm filming this on my phone. If I hold something up and it doesn't look good in iMovie and clear, then I will like just insert the overlay of the... Anyways, so that's a bit about my background. So what did I do this week? Well, you wouldn't know it from looking at the background. I actually cleaned up the studio this week because I had, I've got a bit of a pack rat, and I got way too much stuff. But anyways, I did tidy up this room. Oh yeah, and Spotify. It's the end of the year, sort of. So Spotify Wrapped. It was interesting this year. This is one I will just scroll up. So for the past few years, I didn't get a Spotify till like the middle of 2022. And at the time I was just starting the Noah comic, and I had another project that was a YouTube comedy thing called The Nick White Show. I'll put links down below. I'll just warn you, if you're going to click on the Nick White link, it's extremely vulgar. So, like very vulgar, very rude. So you've been warned if you watch anything on that channel. But anyways, Nick is, in the fictional world, Nick is the second biggest rock star of the 1980s. And he has this bizarre one-sided rivalry with Bono. I don't know. Can you see him? Yeah, I think you can. I gave him a hat and a clown nose to make it a more accurate portrait. But anyways, so I was listening to a lot of U2 and in a lot of like the U2 fan groups and whatnot, which kind of ended up spawning Ricky B. Rat. And now that I have Ricky, I don't care about Bono. But and Miles is very Miles is the one that looks a little more sort of like Bono, but not even. Anyways, where is my train of thought? We're gone. Oh yeah, Spotify. So because I used to listen to so much U2, and I did find there were some songs I used to hear on the radio that I didn't know were U2 that I liked. So, anyways, for like the last couple of years, well, 3 years, 2022, 2023, 2024, Spotify Wrapped has had U2 as the number one artist, and sometimes the number one songs were like 3 out of the 5 were U2 songs. This year, my listening habits, they've kind of gone back to normal, which is to say, I grew up on like sleazy 80s rock like Motley Crue and Poison, that sort of scene, Hanoi Rocks. So I knew that was probably going to change, but I still had a lot of U2 in the thing. And the other thing is, in the mornings now, I tend to listen to classical. Now, I tend to do that on YouTube. So I'll bring up like a symphony performance or whatnot when I'm writing my morning pages, for those familiar with the artist's way. I don't actually write the full 3 pages. I write like sometimes 3 sentences, sometimes a whole page if I'm having a lazy Sunday morning or whatever. But and they tend to be to-do lists, even though I write a to-do list the night before. But whatever. So I knew it was going to be weird this year. And as you've been seeing, as I've been talking, so Motley Crue dethroned the Leprechaun King. So Motley Crue is my number one band this year. But the number one album was The Nutcracker. Number one song was Motley Crue. And then there is a podcast version of Ricky B. Rat, which I haven't done podcasts in a few months. I need to start again in January. But sometimes if I'm like stuck in traffic, because I do the thing where you connect your phone, right? So I can listen to Spotify in my car. If I'm stuck in traffic, sometimes I'll just like go and listen to the old Ricky podcast, because then I'm like, it distracts me from the road rage basically. So anyways, I got busted for the number one podcast I listen to is my own. I'm like the only subscriber to the Ricky B. Rat podcast on Spotify, and I'm the anyways, whatever. So there was that, and then YouTube does their recap or roundup, whatever they call it at the end. Apparently, I am a self-improver. News to me, because I thought I mostly watched really rude comedy podcasts. Well, aside from the classical stuff, I don't know, but I also watch a lot of, where the guys are like watching police body cams and making fun of the idiots getting busted by the cops and stuff like that. So I watch a lot of stuff that is not self-improvement, so I'm very confused by that, but that's what YouTube thinks I am, so hey, whatever. Moving on, obviously this is the first show, so I don't have any questions or comments from the last one, but I will make a comment of a conversation I had with my brother earlier this week, and he was sort of saying, it's like, yeah, whatever, yeah, all the stuff but really what you're best at is painting. You should focus on that. I don't disagree, by the way. It's just, the cartooning serves a different creative need for me. And now I paint with I forgot to even say that. Now I'm painting with my cartoon characters, and I started that last year, I guess. I was already putting my cartoon characters in like printmaking stuff, monotypes and whatnot. But anyways, so that was a little conversation, and like I said, I don't disagree. You gotta do both, and one promotes the other, and it's a big. And the other thing I'll say is my plan for 2026 is to start going pro, in the sense of I'm going to have a Noah book ready for sale. I'm also working on a graphic novel with Ricky and a book of short stories narrated by Ricky. Don't know if both of those would be out next year. Probably the short stories would be. The graphic novel, well, I've been working on it since 2023, and I've perpetually thought I would have it done in 3 months, and it's yeah. And I'm also starting to put my paintings up and out there and try and get some sales. In fact, next Wednesday, the final class of a painting workshop I've been taking this term with Mitchell Villa is ending in a little exhibition. So I have a painting I will show you very shortly, and that is called Ricky's Still Life. Wednesday morning, I will post a video I filmed a couple days ago when I finished the painting. It's like a zoomed over detail view of the painting. I talk about it a bit. The reason why I haven't posted that yet is I need to get the details of how long the exhibition is up. I think a week. It's going to be at the Cowichan Valley Arts Council's annex gallery. So if you're in Duncan, BC, the same building as the library, the Cowichan Community Center, the Arts Council has a gallery space in there, and it's kind of split into two. There's a smaller section next to their offices, which is called the annex. That's where our exhibition's going to be. And then they have the bigger Cowichan Valley Arts Center gallery. And then they also do exhibition space upstairs in the lobby of the theater, but we're in the annex anyways. So I have the thing ready to go, and then once the show is hung, I'll come home, put in like a text screen at the end that has the details, and or just put it in the description or whatever, patch it in somewhere, and then post the video. So, but the point is, if you're on Vancouver Island and you want to see the Ricky painting, if you want to take Ricky home, then starting Wednesday, come to Cowichan Valley Arts Council's gallery space, and you can see him, you can buy him. He's going to be $720 Canadian. I don't know that the Arts Council does any shipping or online sales. I don't think they do. So, what I said earlier about holding things up, I'm looking at Ricky leaning against my art supplies shelves right now, but I'm just going to patch in image while I'm talking. That is the one thing I finished this week. Well, it's the big thing I finished this week. So he is getting varnished maybe tomorrow. I need to take proper photographs, and then I have glossy varnish for him, and also a painting I did last year that hasn't been varnished called Vote for Miles. So I have haul. And why don't we quickly bang that out, eh? So first of all, Gamvar. And I got the gloss. I was going to get satin, but the thing is they had like 5 bottles of Gamvar on the shelf. And this is actually, is this the bigger size? I think this is the bigger size. I think there was a smaller. Yeah, this is the 8 ounce. I'd actually wanted to get, there's even a smaller bottle, but I think they were either sold out of the smaller or, oh yeah, this is what happened. So if I put my hand there, maybe you can see in the camera, hopefully it's like focused there because I'm hiding. But you can see it's clear, right? So the there were 4 or 5 other bottles at the Uptown Michael's in satin, but they all looked white at the bottom, which is to say they're actually gone bad. It's supposed to be clear all the way through, even for satin. Matte, I don't know, like the matte thing, I don't know, but Mitchell actually this week showed a demonstration, and I'm glad he mentioned, because he had a bottle that he had used a little bit, and once you open it, it starts to harden, I guess, once it's exposed to air. So he had a bottle that he'd only used a little bit out of, and he does huge paintings, you know, but it was already milky at the bottom, and he made the comment about you could try and stir it up, but it probably, like, you may screw up your painting. So anyways, that's why I mention it, is if you're going to buy Gamvar, make sure it's clear at the bottom, okay? Tip from Mitchell Villa to you via my mouth, my loud mouth. Anyways, the only one they had that was clear all the way through was the gloss, so I'm going to get, that's what Ricky's getting, and that's what Vote for Miles is getting. Those are the only 2 paintings I have finished that would be ready for varnish. And the Vote for Miles isn't for sale. That's one I did. It hangs in my dining room. But anyways, so I got Gamvar. Now, if I'd gone to Opus, like they would have had the other, and they actually go through and check and toss out the ones that are going off Michael's. Well, I used to work at a Michael's when I lived in the Vancouver area, and you'll get certain people who know what they're talking about, but also then the store manager would probably be like, "We're not writing off 4 bottles of this shit. It's like $35 a bottle, etc." Like there's that sort of thing too. But also probably nobody's noticed. A lot of acrylic painters don't even varnish their paintings, I think. You should. It gives some protection against UV fading and whatnot, but a lot of people just like, oh, that's just for oil paintings. And some oil painters don't varnish either, right? But anyways, so Gamvar, the first thing I got, sorry, because I'm moving it, we're going to have squeaking. I think it's done now. So I also went to the Home Sense in Victoria, the one that's close to the Red Robin. And they do have some art supplies. Some of the stuff they have is good. Some of it's crap. These little notebooks are awesome. I love them. Now, they are the British dimensions, which is a little... Although now I'm used to it, right? It's a little skinnier up and down versus the North American one. So, like, this is 5.5 by 8. And I should put on my reading glasses so it's not blurry. 5.5 by 8.5. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's ours that are skinnier, because I think ours might be like 5 by 8. Anyways, whatever. I'm not going to pull out another sketchbook, but the paper quality is pretty solid. And I like the fact that that it's colorful. So it's easier for my brain if I'm staring at a stack of sketchbooks to kind of remember, oh, the Ricky B. Rat one is the red one. Anyways, and I mean, I do write on even the black ones. I write what they are on the side. In fact, yeah, can we see what I have? This is my Inktober notebook. I did not finish. I thought I was going to do this whole book in Inktober. It's not done. But that just means I have like because I was going to do like basically two spreads per day, film them for reels and whatnot. And you can see on my channel, I got some of that done. Halfway through, I kind of petered out. I think there's like 20 left, because I assigned, and some of them even like some of them even have like blue line underdrawings. I just didn't get a chance to ink them, but that just means that I have a head start on 2026's Inktober. So I just put /26 and like a +26. But anyways, you can see how I decorate the covers. I'm making so much noise. I really need to get my dad to put WD-40 on this chair. And I say this, and who knows, maybe it's not picking up too badly in the mic, but it's like super loud in my ears. Anyways, sometimes you can also get the full size of those, and they're Montmartre sketchbooks. So this is one. That's Noah. Quit spying on me. But it says lazy NA marker sketches, because some days I'm not like organized. I get distracted, or I get lazy and just sit on my ass doing like word search puzzles and watching YouTube, but I should be cartooning. So some days, if I don't have it done, I'll just do like a marker sketch, like that one. No cartoon today, guys. The cartoonist just to write a paper. And then I'll take a photo with my phone and I'll post that, and that'll be the sketchbook. This book I've done one of these books as a tour sort of recently on my channel. But anyways, I love these books because of the bright color. So I can sort of see across the studio. I know, like, okay, the big green one that I'm currently working on is my Noah bonus material, right? So I can see it across the room. Whereas back in the day when all the sketchbooks were black, I remember that in the 90s, that was still the case. I mean, if you painted them or whatnot, you could tell them apart, but otherwise it's like, okay, I did that drawing that reference that I need right now for this painting. It's in my sketchbook. Which sketchbook? I don't know. One of the black ones. I don't know. I have 50 black sketchbook. You know, like you'd have to write something on the spine and whatnot. But anyways, so I like that there's more color options. Basically, if you're a store that I go to regularly and you want to suck the money out of my pocket, have colorful sketchbooks with decently thick paper, and that's kind of a guaranteed way to get my money. What else did I get? I also, right, because I was at Michael's, so I picked up these elegant writer pens, and if I do this on my face, hopefully it focuses on the pen and on my face. Speedball, and they're like the chisel tips for calligraphy. But one of the things I like actually when I'm doing that kind of marker sketch or the Ricky ones is I like it where the line goes thick and thin. That's the kind of brush I use in Procreate when I do the Noah cartoons. And I had a marker set that I got years ago at Michael's that was that kind of tip. And they were awesome. I bought like 2 sets of them and I'm still using them. They haven't run out of ink yet, which is phenomenal for markers. But the black one is starting, like it's still pretty good, but I don't know when it's going to die, and they haven't had those for ages. So I saw these and I'm like, oh, maybe I'll have to test them out, but that's potentially a good substitute. And we're going to have a thunk as I throw this on my desk. Boom. And then I bought some paint because the Gamvar, Michael's had a buy 2 get 1 free for, you know, mediums and certain paints. So I can't pass that up without taking advantage of it. So I also got a couple Liquitex heavy body, quinacridone magenta. And I'm hoping that if I do this on my face, then it focuses on the tube and not. Sometimes the camera will focus on my face and then this is all blurry, and what's the point? And then Naphthol Crimson, and the same thing. So they were in the price range of the Gamvar, so one of these was free. Squeaky, squeaky, squeak as I lean over. See, I treat my paint with respect. I leaned over, I didn't just... Anyways, so there's my haul, which I wasn't planning to put on the video, but anyways, there we go. Whips. Works in progress. In the embroidery FlossTube world, sometimes you hear them called UFOs, although UFO is usually something that was a whip that then got abandoned or sidetracked. Or usually UFO means you haven't actually touched it in a while. So if I had a UFO parade, like, we won't go there. I have many, many UFOs of all different mediums, including embroidery and painting, etc. But for whips, things I'm currently working on. Now, the first thing I have on my card says no NA comics. Well, I only have one NA comic that's a whip this week. It's the one that I have to finish after I've filmed this video. I'll post it this afternoon. And it's in my iPad, so anyways, whatever. But technically, the Noah's Archipelago comics should be in a previous section of the finishes this week, because I finished and posted 2. So, but anyways, I will be scrolling those across as I meant talking about them. They've probably already scrolled across. And then Advent Reels. This is a whip in the sense of it's an ongoing project this week. I started on November 30th. I'm going to go up to Christmas. Kind of like Inktober, where I have a little sketchbook, and I'm doing 1 per day. And I do the underdrawing with a non-photo blue pencil, and then I ink it just with markers. Squeaky, squeaky, squeak. I use these like they're the Staedtler pigment liners, and I use like 0.5, 0.5, 0.7, 1.2. Somewhere I swear I have one of these that's like a chisel tip like those liners, but I cannot find it for the life of me. You can probably guess my filing system leaves a lot to be desired. That's going to be a New Year's resolution, like it has been for the last 30 years. Yeah, anyways, whatever. I usually have a vague idea of where to find things. And then Noah Colada is my other thing. This is a painting that I'm not going to put in any shows because the canvas is cheap, crappy canvas. It also has a T-bar, crossbar in the back that is placed in such a way that would screw with a hanging wire. And the crossbar is kind of bowed out, so it's probably not going to hang totally flat on the wall. So I didn't notice that before I started this painting, so I'm just going to keep it for myself. The other thing is those hot pinks in the background, those are done with a fluorescent paint. This canvas was originally not a painting canvas. It was a canvas I used as like a wall background for the Nick White show. Hey, Pyra, also put in just like a teeniest little clip of the Nick White show so people know what I'm talking about.
All right, love, can you face the other way and bend down to touch your toes? Very nice. Give your card to Sally. We'll be in touch for round 2. Next.
But anyways, for that, I didn't have to care about light fastness or if the color was stable or if it was going to fade out. And then I didn't really think about that when I started painting on top. So the colors on top are professional colors. They should be stable and whatnot. But the fluorescent-y kind of pink, I don't know, man. Some of it's like the folk art, which is also acrylic paint, but it's designed for like model builders or whatnot. So it's not like, I mean, hopefully it would last a long time, but it's not like, it doesn't have a light fastness. Like these have the little symbols in the front. Like this is series 2 is a price thing. It tells you what pigment it is. The folk arts, I don't think, tell you what pigment. And then it has like little signs. So light fastness 2, very good. It's not the best, but it's, you know, it's decent. And then it marks that semi-opaque. And then actually quinacridone magenta is light fastest 1, excellent. So that's good to know that the naphthol may not be as light fast. Anyways, point is, I wouldn't want to sell a painting where I don't know about the pigments and how long they'll last. Maybe it'll last. Maybe it'll be like hot pink, like super bright, longer than I'm alive. But maybe in 10 years it'll be faded and dull, right? So, anyways, I'm going to keep that painting. I'll probably do a version of it on a better canvas that's like gallery wrapped, high quality, doesn't have this stupid like T-bar messing up the back, and go from the start knowing that all my pigments are solid, right? But anyways, Noah Collada. This is Noah from he is nowhere near done. That's why his eyes look kind of messed up with no pupils and whatnot. He'll eventually have partial outlines like Ricky had, and I already showed Ricky, right? So, but what I worked on this week is his costume. He is dressed up like a pineapple. He is Noah. Oh yeah, I didn't talk about it yet. Noah's basic deal is he's a stay-at-home dad by day, and then he sings in cover bands and tribute bands at night. So one of the things he does is, of course, a whole lot of self-promotion, selfies, and reels and stuff. So he's filming himself singing the Pina Colada song in front of his mother-in-law's pool. Anyways, so he takes his costuming very, very seriously. Anyways, so there's that. Now, sometimes in FlossTube, you'll have what they call previous finishes. So might be something seasonal or just something that was finished the previous some point in the past, and the stitcher is showing like, here's some work I did before. Especially if you're like stuck in like whipland, you know, everything's half done or whatever. It's nice to show like a finished piece. And that's the other thing. Finished object mean in cross stitch would mean like you finished it and then you've either framed it or you've mounted it on a plaque in the sense that, or made it into a pin cushion or something like that. In art, of course, if it's a canvas, when you finish painting and you varnish it, then I guess it's a finished object. But if you do other stuff, technically, I guess it has to be framed to be an FFO. But some of my stuff I don't frame, I just pin up. So we've got a few things I'm going to show you. Ricky! This is a watercolor I did in 2023. Ricky is, he's seen a giant floating block of cheese. Maybe he may have consumed some substances because cheese doesn't normally float like in the air like that. But Whether it's real or not, Ricky is paying it due tribute. And there he is in his little leather jacket, his little leather pants and stuff. And this is a fairly early rendering of Ricky compared to the more recent one, but you get the idea. And I love this one. I have them hanging on my bulletin board behind me with a little clip, so you will in future, if assuming I continue filming in this messy corner and not some other part of my house, you will start seeing Ricky poking up behind me like that. So, but Ricky. Also from 2023, we have Noah in his little pool floaty. He is actually wearing a Speedo, although his butt is obscured by the floaty, so we can't really see that. I've tried in the cartoons when I have that to make his ass hang down under the floaty so we can see that he's got something on. He's not just like floating around buck naked in the in-laws pool. I mean, he might do that if nobody's home, but you know, if the kids are around, that's kind of, yeah, we want to make sure that he is wearing his a Speedo. He's got a little beer, and this is also watercolor on paper. And then I mentioned printmaking. I need to do more of it. I was going to Ladysmith Arts, and they have sometimes open printmaking studios for less experience. They also have a group that's like advanced printmakers that meets weekly. But that was for monotypes mostly did. But I do lino cut. I'm lazy. I'm like looking, I have blocks of lino that needs to be cut. But anyways, here's what I did. This is Miles, Ricky's girlfriend's half rat, half mouse cousin Miles. A rare instance of Miles smiling, because he's at the carnival. He's got cotton candy and a candy apple. Normally, Miles only smiles when he's dealing with money. He's a very cynical little dude, but and has a short temper. You will have already seen him in the Advent reels being very upset at being mistaken for an elf at this time of year. But Miles, because he's half rat, half mouse, the tips of his ears come up to Ricky's chin. And then actual mice with the tips of their ears would just come up to Miles's chin. But anyways, he now lives in Ratsville amongst the rats, so he's like the shortest adult in town. Well, there are pygmy rats, but we haven't really gotten into that in the story yet. Pygmy rats, not so many of them in Ratsville. They tend to live in Ratabama and places like that. But anyways, there's a whole geography thing we'll get into at some point in one of that. Actually might be the next Ricky podcast, is Ricky explaining the geography of where he lives and how it relates to the human, well, our world, but Ricky would just call it the weird world, places where people aren't rats and mice. Anyways, so yeah, Miles gets upset if you mistake him for an elf. So do not, if you see this dude wandering around, do not go up there and ask him what Santa's bringing you for Christmas, because he will, and do not let your kids do that, because he will have a very foul language reply to you. And he wouldn't know what Santa's bringing you anyways, because he's not actually an elf. And lastly, one more watercolor from 2023. This was done about a week after the Titan submersible explosion. When the words started to come out about they were using that Stockton Rush was using expired carbon fiber wrap. Anyways, my friend Tiffany and I are obsessed with this case. We both sat through and watched the entire testimony for the Coast Guard. I emailed myself the link to the Coast Guard report. It's like 300 pages. I haven't had time to sit down and read it yet. I watched I know what's in the report because I've watched YouTube videos discussing it, but I haven't actually sat down and read it myself yet in the NTSB. But anyways, it sparked this painting of Ricky going for a swim, and this relates to the first Ricky graphic novel, which is called Ricky B Goes to Sea. All I'm going to say at this point, I mean, I have had some like reels. If you go way back, there are some reels of me inking pages from that book in on my channel. I can't remember how much I say about the storyline there. I think I was like trying to start towards the front or like do it randomly so that people can't piece together the whole story yet. Because, you know, obviously I want you to buy the book when the book is eventually done. But let's just say it involves Ricky, who knows absolutely nothing about the sea, deciding he wants to go fetch something from the Titanic wreck. So he has to build himself his little junk submarine. And fortunately, let's just say it's a cartoon world, so things end better for Ricky. But I'm not going to say how it ends, you know. But obviously, I'm not killing off my main rat dude. So, anyways, that is a little peek at some previous finishes and hints for future ones. So I guess that gets into a little bit of the what have I been watching. I noticed Priscilla and Chelsea always talk about what they're watching. Now they watch very different shows than I do. They watch reality TV. I watch YouTube, which is kind of similar but worse. I don't worse or better or whatever. What did I watch this week? Well, I watched Sean Combs' The Reckoning, the documentary that 50 Cent produced about things. It was excellent. I am not a hip hop fan, other than when I was a kid. You know, some of the guys in my class were obsessed with Ice-T back when he had the Power, when Body Count was out, and OG Original Gangster, the Power album. You know, like Power. Anyways, I won't quote lyrics, but anyways, so I watched that, or anyways, I'm familiar a little teeny bit with like I knew who Sean Combs was, but I didn't listen to his stuff. So anyways, just looking at my watch because any moment now, my dad usually on Saturday mornings comes over and we go to, he has a coffee, I have a burger or whatever. But anyways, my back door could fling open at any moment, in which case I'll just cut off the video and that'll be it. But anyways, so I watched the Sean Combs documentary. It was fascinating, and like I said, I was on the fringes of the music scene in Vancouver. I never saw anything like that. I mean, I believe it, but you know, the guys I used to have dealings with, it was much more low level. It was like roll a blunt at 10 a.m., beer o'clock is at noon. Certain guys who had like 10 different side chicks, and were always fighting with the wife and complaining about having to sleep on the couch because the wife would find out about the side chicks. Anyways, like that kind of like very, like it's kind of scuzzy, but it's, I mean, compared to the things that Diddy was accused of, it's downright wholesome, almost. Not really, but you know, like I never witnessed any of the really bad stuff. It's kind of like I've had friends ask me about Me Too. It's like, well, you got to keep in mind when I worked in that business. I mean, you can tell I am not a skinny girl, right? I like candy. That'll be another New Year's resolution. But when I worked in the music industry, I weighed 230 pounds. So, like, let's be blunt. I wasn't going to be the girl who got the booty calls, okay? But anyways, I like you hear all kind of rumors. I mean, hey, everybody knew what Motley Crue was up to, right? That was part of their marketing. You know, same with Guns N' Roses back in the day. It was part of their marketing that they were debauched. But in terms of what I actually witnessed myself, no. I certainly wouldn't have been invited to any of those kind of parties. And I don't think any of the guys I worked with were anywhere near on that level. They were just, you know, cheating on their wives and getting stoned and drunk too early in the day. But anyways, I'm sure some of the stuff from that documentary will inspire future. Because the thing I forgot to mention earlier, I mentioned that Noah sings in bar bands and stuff, but he wouldn't be exposed to any of that stuff. And I try and keep Noah's Archipelago a semi-wholesome thing. I mean, Noah's always trying to get laid with the wife and whatnot, but you know, we don't have any. Him and his buddies will have beers and stuff, but not, you know, it's very, you know, it's. I wouldn't go so far as to say it's a family cartoon, but it's like a semi-family cartoon. It's like PG, PG-13. Ricky, I mean, the Nick White Show, if anyone did click on that link, you know the Nick White Show is definitely not PG. It was very vulgar and whatnot. I'm not doing the Nick White Show anymore, other than I have a whole bunch of scripts that I never filmed, and I kind of have an idea about turning them into a novel, but that's kind of low on the priority list. Ricky is more adult, older teenager, adult aimed. So we do have Ricky talking about, you know, he's always trying to get laid. His boss cheats on, you know, his boss Big Mike is always cheating on Mrs. Mike. Miles is a bit of a little womanizer, mousenizer, whatever. So you have that sort of stuff, but you might have some like some of the stuff from the Sean Combs documentary may end up influencing future Ricky stuff about, you know, rumors he may have heard. Well, I was gonna say he works in a recording studio. He's what they call a runner. So he is in charge of going and fetching pizza and beer and weed and stuff like that for his boss and clients at the recording studio. So some of that may eventually come into that. What else am I watching on a much more wholesome level? So in Noah's Archipelago, his mom was raised partly in Greenland. Her dad, like the family is Danish Canadian. Her dad was a mining engineer, so they worked at there was a big aluminum cryolite mine in Greenland during World War II, and not long after, or I think ran into the 70s or something. And then her dad moved to Flin Flon, Manitoba, because Flin Flon is fun to say. That's why I picked Flin Flon. Maybe I've been there, I don't know. If so, I've driven through on a road trip, you know, been there for 5 minutes type of thing. But anyways, Noah grew up on the prairies. Anyways, because Granny Thorson is from Greenland, every so often it comes up in the comics. So I was doing some research on Greenland. I was watching a couple weeks ago, just a couple who are Finnish, and they do Arctic sailing. I think it's called Alluring Arctic, whatever. I'll try and put a link try and remember to put a link down below. So now, because they actually wintered over with a boat deliberately frozen into the ice one winter in Greenland. Now I have stuff about Greenland coming up in my YouTube feed. So I watched a B1M little video documentary about a army base that the Americans dug into the glaciers in Greenland in the 50s and abandoned in the 60s, and how that related to the Cold War and whatnot. That was pretty fascinating. And then of course, I watch Bob Ross every night. Not every night, most nights. I'll watch Bob Ross video as I'm winding down, getting ready for bed. He's got that very soothing voice, you know. Obviously not my painting style at all, but it's fun to check that out. I've been watching a lot of artist studio tours lately because I need to organize mine more. And then I've been binge watching Catherine K. Catherine with a C and then K-A-Y is her last name. Her business is Catnip, K-A-T-N-I-P-P. She's an illustrator, but then her other channel, Catherine K, is her personal stuff and a lot of travel vlogs and whatnot. I actually started binging her Japan travel logs from like 2 years ago. So that's kind of been what I have been watching. And then I also escaped to rural France, the guy who's like bought a ruined chateau and is rebuilding it. And anyways, so that's kind of what I've been watching. All right. Little break there. My dad came over. We went for breakfast. So an abrupt stop to the video, and now I restart an hour or two, hour and a half, something like that later, 2 hours later. Anyways, so I figured I would wrap up with what I'm going to be doing this week. Now, a couple of the things, my notes are actually from when I filmed this yesterday, where no sound because my mic wasn't working. So, a couple of these are actually things I've done now. Yesterday afternoon, I went to Madrona Gallery in Victoria in order to check out Tamara Bond's a little exhibition. I had missed going to the opening a couple weeks ago, and Tamara, I've taken a class with her at Vancouver Island School of Art 2 years ago. Actually took a class on graphic novels. So when I was doing a lot of the planning and starting work for the Ricky B Goes to Sea book, that was in her class. Anyways, it was great to see Tamara's work. They were all, it was a series of, I think, a dozen. No, I think there were actually more than that. I think there might have been 14 or 16, but they were 16-inch panels, the cradled panels, like the wood panels, and mixed media on that. And she draws a lot from like dream and subconscious stuff. I'll link below. But the pictures look great on Madrona's website, but to see them in person, like there's certain colors that you just can't seem to reproduce in photography. Like seeing them in person, like the bright oranges were kind of like they're like almost vibrant. It was awesome. I also went to see White Christmas last night. Was it Victoria? I'm gonna get the name wrong. VOS, Victoria. It's not Victoria Opera Society, but it's like the group that does musical theater in Victoria. The dance performances were great. The music was great. Acting, well, I mean, some actors I liked better than others. So, and also it's in theater. People tend to be, like, whereas I'm more used to watching YouTube, watching TV. I grew up watching sitcoms. So, like, to me, it's like, oh, that's like overdone. But it is kind of probably the correct amount of done for the theater. Or it's a matter of taste, I guess is the way we would put it. I mean, a long time ago when I used to write for Discorder magazine, I did actually, and was involved with CITR radio, I actually did do a lot of theater reviews back in the day. So I'm not like a greatly experienced theater critic, and I'll admit some of it is, like I said, taste, where it's like, oh, everybody else in the theater is like, and I'm just like, but there wasn't too much of that. All in all, the show was pretty good. And my main complaints actually are be what they call the books. So, which is to say the plot, the dialogue, and all that. And that's obviously it's not these performers. Somebody in New York City, I'm assuming New York, or actually I think it was San Francisco for the stage adaptation for White Christmas. Somebody's decided to write it like this, and they added in an extra plot where like the general's um, front desk assistant in the movie, it's Emma, and yeah, she does eavesdrop on things and spreads rumors and stuff. Like that was in the movie and in this, but then in the stage play she just happens to be this former Broadway singer and dancer, and it just gets stupid, to be honest. But again, that's not the fault of this cast or this ensemble. That is the guy who did the adaptation. And if I think I was looking up, and a lot of the reviews from the time were kind of commenting on the same stuff. So, anyways, whatever. It was entertaining. Would I see that play again? No. Would I see that cast again? Sure, depending on what the play was. So, anyways, it was a night out as opposed to sitting on my butt watching YouTube, which is kind of fun. And the theater is beautiful if you ever get a chance to go to the McPherson Playhouse. I believe it's one of the Pantages theaters. So like old theater, very ornate, absolutely beautiful. And the seats, I mean, I am not a skinny girl, as I mentioned earlier. I'm actually down about 20 pounds since the end of June, just under like 18 or something. And I could fit in the seats. Like, obviously, lose another 100 pounds, those seats would be very roomy. Maybe not so much the leg room, although, well, you put enough on your butt, you're sitting forward, so you lose leg room. when you have too much weight. So what, not bad. And definitely I had an aisle seat, so I could kind of do this with my feet out in the aisle, which was great. But anyways, like I said, definitely beautiful theater. Cast was great. The book, and yeah, I'm like having the general's granddaughter do a song and dance number, and it's a reprise, but a reprise should just be a shorter snippet of the song you already sung, not like the entire thing redone with a new character. Anyways, again, we're getting into stuff that doesn't have to do with my painting. Other than, again, things can come up in Ricky and Noah's plot lines based on things I see. Anyways, that's stuff that should be at the beginning because it's what I already did this week. What I am doing coming up, I've got tickets to see a performance of Handel's Messiah next week. Now, next week, 'cause that's on a Friday night, will I end up doing this on Saturday morning again next week? Well, maybe. I'm going to try and actually film these on like a Friday night, Friday afternoon, Friday night, and post them on Saturday morning. But it doesn't really matter, right? If it ends up going up on Saturday, people see it later anyways, who cares, right? But anyways, next week's show, I may not have anything to report on it if I end up filming it before I go. What I am going to be doing immediately after this, other than, uploading the footage so I can edit it later, is I need to bake some cookies. And I also need to finish today's Noah and post that, but that'll probably get posted actually early evening, which is fine because it's Noah and his wife Ruth. They're in bed, and she's yapping at him. He's trying to read Rock Dude magazine, and anyways, so that kind of works for posting it later in the day, right? Because it's a bedtime comic. Later this week, Catholic Women's League potluck at my church. I'm bringing salad and possibly cookies. Well, I think everybody brings cookies, and then so I'll bring salad as well. So anyways, there's that. And hey, Christmas cards. Yeah, I should probably send those. It's December 6th. Will I get them done tomorrow? Maybe. It's probably one of those things where in the end, I won't get it done in time, and I'll just like end up like messaging my relatives on Facebook or text message or talking to them on the phone to wish them Merry Christmas. That's what happened the last 2 years. I think 2022, I actually did get Christmas cards mailed out. It was pretty cool. It's a tradition I think needs to come back. So, I need to put my money where or put my activity where my mouth is and actually do them. So that's what's upcoming. And for art stuff, well, I mean, the exhibition I mentioned, I got to work some more on Noah. I'm like pointing at them. You can't see them. They're behind you. More Advent reels and Noah comics. And the big thing I got to get done in December, I don't know if I'll get started on it this week, is I need to do website overhauls. So update the Noah site, update the Ricky site, because there's a lot of comics and stuff that have not been posted yet. They're posted on social media, but not on the actual website, which and I need to overhaul my website, Draculea.com, which brings us to plugs and stuff. I'm just gonna slap them in the description box, but I got Instagram, I got Facebook, I got X or Twitter, whatever they're calling it. I got a Substack, and then Noah has Instagram, Facebook, X, Tumblr as well. Ricky has all of those as well, and that's kind of it. Thank you for watching, especially if you made it all the way to here, and catch you next time.